Hello, it's Gary Dennis, your candidate for Richland 2 School Board. Coming to you, I'm doing the recap of the 27 August 2024 school board meeting. So I got to make an apology straight off. I went back to look at the video and I cannot find the video. And also my kids are in the backyard playing, and you will hear them splashing around having a good old time and probably playing Marco Polo a lot. So I'm sorry if you hear that, but I got to get this video done, and so we're going to roll into it. So they started the school board meeting, and then they paused the session to go into the executive session. Executive session is where they talked about the student administration request into the district's adult education program, the employment recommendations and certified releases. And once they have done that, they came back out at 6:30. At 6:30 on the dot, they gavelled in. They came out of executive session and started and resumed the public session. They had an inspirational moment and Pledge of Allegiance. The inspirational moment was presented by Dr. Tia S. Jones, the principal from Catawba Trail Elementary School. And she had a reading of What Do You Do with the Chance? And I really enjoyed that presentation because it made me think I have a chance to get on the school board and make this the best district in America, and if not the world. So we can blaze that path to make that happen and have every other school district looking at us wanting to know why and how we're doing it and why we're doing so good. Now, from there, we moved on to some special recognition. So Mrs. Angela Nash, Mr. Trapp, Mrs. Tamika Washington, and Mrs. Porter, they all completed level 2 of the SBA. That's the School Board Association Boardsmanship Institute training. They were all presented a little diploma from that. And then they also recognized Miss Tamika Washington for her efforts as board secretary for the 23-24 school year. And then from there, they went into the consent agenda. Now, the consent agenda was split in two because, let me bring up my notes real quick. It appeared when they were doing the motion on the minutes, the motion was, I move to approve the minutes from August 13th, 2024 regular board meeting. It was 6-1. All yes, except for one no, which was Lindsay Agostini. Lindsay Agostini made a comment about the release time for religious studies, and that conversation was, if I'm not mistaken, was not added to the minutes. So, Ms. Agostini, if you're watching this, I don't want to put words in your mouth or take it the wrong way, but from my understanding, you were saying that wasn't in the minutes, and that's why you voted no. That's what I got. Now, I tried to go back, like I said, to watch the video, but the video's saying it's still waiting to be played. So I don't know if there was a live video last night of the board meeting because I cannot find the recording. And then from there, they moved to accept the classified employment release and in-district transfers as needed, and that was a 7-0 vote. From there, they went into public participation, which is item 7.1. Now, in 7.1, they had two presenters to come talk in the public, and one of them was Dr. Anna Parrish, and she talked about last year how they were at 115% capacity with 760 kids, and now this year they got 889 kids. So they was really looking to get some help to possibly rezone that area. That's something that I have not looked into. I have not heard that until tonight or until last night. So I think that's something the board needs to look into, and administration. And then they had a Mrs. Edith Hines, which is a speech pathologist. And the thing is, our district scores have been real low, and this is a position that we need. And their whole group talked about how the pay equity is not there. So what they make in the outside world versus the school setting is not remotely close. And they thought they were going to get that because they were at the budget sessions and things like that during the budget season last year, and they thought they were going to get it, but they didn't get what they thought they were going to get. And really and truly, nobody got what they thought they were going to get. You know, it was made to seem like certain jobs were going to get a living wage, and really they didn't. Did they get an increase? Yes, they got an increase, but it wasn't what everybody was thinking they were going to get, and that's across the board. I've had a lot of people reach out to me saying, "Hey, we didn't get what we're going to do. We're really burnt out. We're really upset, and we didn't find out until they was already in school." So, I wouldn't be surprised if we've seen some people not coming back and trying to go to these other districts that are actually paying more. And what I mean by other districts, it's not just right across in Richland 1 or Lexington 5 or any of that stuff. I mean, there are other school districts here in the state of South Carolina that pay more for certain jobs, and I think some of these people might look at going there. And that's quite concerning, considering we're wanting to keep our top talent. And one of my things was, for the SET, which is Security, Education, Transparency, is what I'm running on, is to adjust salaries for existing faculty and staff to appropriately recognize and reward their experience and long-term dedication to the district. That's just something that I think really needs to be looked at and looked into deeper meaning than just trying to rush through a budget season. I think that should be something that should be started now and really getting into that. Now, they probably don't need to have talks every meeting, but they need to start looking at the data and looking at things. I know there was a group that was paid to come up with a new pay scale. I do not think that group did a great job. I would like to see more in depth of how they got there, but nobody has heard anything yet. So that's where we're at with that. So from 7.1, they moved into the Section 8, which is 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3. So basically, it's student admission request into district's adult education program and employment recommendations and certified releases. So they voted on those two items, and it was 7-0 on both of them. Now, we don't get details because that's executive session items. Next, we moved into 9.1, and, this struck me really good because I have been a proponent of disciplinary issues. That was one of my main goals coming on school board in November is discipline. A lot of teachers, and it was just on the news today that 43, 47% feel like their job is meaningful, down from 75% 8 years ago, and one of the main issues was disciplinary issues. So we looked at the fourth quarter slides, and you can pull these slides up if you go to the agenda and you can click on the links. And they talked about level 1, level 2, level 3 infractions and the numbers there. And basically, level 1 is like horseplay, ID violations, inappropriate affection behavior, leaving class, skipping school, contraband, cheating, aiding others. And then level 2 goes into alcohol, liquor law violations, assault simple, bite, pinch, spit, detention violations, disturbing school, fighting, fireworks fraud, gambling, harassment, and then tobacco violations, stolen property. And then you go into level 3, that's the top tier stuff. That's arson, aggravated assault, bullying, cyberbullying, drug distribution, drug possession, drug usage, fire alarm, gang activity, intimidation, larceny, theft, non-forced sex offense, other offenses, serious sex violations, sexual harassment, and weapons. So we're just going to peruse over level 3 in the 2024. There was 59 instances. So you got 1 cyberbullying, 2 drug distributions, 24 drug possessions, 23 drug uses in school. Gang activity 1, intimidation is 3, larceny theft 1, non-forced sex offense 1, and then you got sex violation at 3. And then it has bus violations 18 down at the bottom. I'm not quite sure how that works. So there's a total of 59. So I think policies should outline how we tackle discipline. I think if we can tackle discipline and stop in-class distractions and things like that. I think that will help these teachers teach better and take things off their plate. And to do that, we need to make sure administration and teachers have the backing from the district and from policies and from administrative rules. We need to make sure those rules and policies are airtight. That way we can break down everything. I mean, everything's broken down pretty good, but we need to break it down even more, and we can need to work hard as a group, not just the school board members, not just administration, but as parents with your school improvement councils, your PTOs, parent advisory councils, all that, to come up with a way and get everybody involved. And I'm not a committee person. I like to tackle things, but things as delicate as this, and the only way to find a way is everybody be involved. And it also comes down to parents teaching their kids right from wrong. Teaching discipline, teaching respect. And I think that would have a lot to do and save face with a lot of items that we have to deal with. They talked about in-school suspensions and expulsions and things like that, and the numbers are quite staggering, and we're not going to go into that in depth. But they did talk about Blythewood Academy and how out of 400 that were placed there, 10% of them failed to complete the program. So you got 10% that didn't complete it. And why didn't they complete it? We couldn't get a good answer. It was it made it sound like transportation was an issue. Transportation, these kids have to have people watch over them to complete this. But here's my thing. If there is a kid that couldn't make it for transportation, and Mrs. Porter talked about a virtual, why couldn't we have a virtual option? And then it was brought up, well, if these kids need to be watched in depth, it's hard to leave them at home virtually. Well, if they're not in the program and they're just at home anyway, let's say if there might have been one or two kids out there that wanted to do it, to continue to get on. It might have been something that happened at school and it was unfortunate. We don't truly know. But there could have been one or two kids that a virtual option could help. So I think we need to look into that. Tamika Washington talked about the cut in class and things like that, and refusal to obey within level 1, and how we should start having quarterly meetings to figure this out. And I do agree with that, because that's one of the things I want to do, is be more involved with the disciplinary issues. And then one of the other things was the failure to complete work. Kids are getting in trouble for failure to complete work, and that's the way it made it sound. But it's not just not doing your work. It's blatantly not doing your work. Like, I'm not doing it. You can't make me do it. I'm not going to do it. That's what was presented in my eyes. It wasn't, oh, I just forgot. It was, you can't make me. And yes, that is a disciplinary issue. Dr. Moore talked about during the summertime, and my wife took this because she's RTI at a school in District 2, and they did conscious disciplinary training, and they did that across the board for teachers and staff and all that stuff. And, I am a firm believer, if we can tackle discipline, that will help with safety, that will help with education, and that will also help with transparency. And I wholeheartedly believe that's something that we need to do as a school board, is really get into the weeds of that. Now, they also hit on something that parents need to be aware of, and it is House Bill 1188. And I'm just going to read this real quick. If procedures for expulsion are initiated, the parents or legal guardian of the pupil shall be notified in writing of the time and place of a hearing, either before the board or a person or committee designated by the board. The written notification to the parents or legal guardian of the pupil must include their right to have legal counsel present at the hearing, the right to question all witnesses, that's the key, question all witnesses, and contact information for legal aid service provider, which may determine eligibility for free legal representation. The notification must also include the right to access the investigative file in its entirety, to include all documents and videos, at least 3 days prior to the hearing, with appropriate exemptions and redactions as required by the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 20 U.S.C. Section 1232G. I think that is a good thing because there could be times some kids could get caught up, and it is a legal thing that needs to be done, not just expulsion or anything like that. I think this would also lead to some of these high instances getting legal help and possibly helping turn these kids around. So I think it's a good thing, but also it's a sticky slope with this one. But the House, they put that bill in front of us, and that's where school board members and parents, we have to look at it, and there's 2 lines, and we got to color within those lines to make it happen. From there, they went into, that was it. They were done. But they did have in-depth talking, and sounds like the kids outside are having a blast. Wish I could be out there with them, but we're getting this done real quick. Lindsay Agostini did ask how they're going to address House Bill 1188, and they said the administrative rule, they did update that, but it's not a board policy, it's an administrative rule. I think administrative rules should be somehow rolled into board policy so that everybody, it's done correct, and that way if there's any legal ramifications, the board was actually voted on items and done it correct. Now, I know they vote and say, yeah, it's good, they institute it, but I think we need to look at a new way to say that administrative rules were voted correctly by the board. And then, Dr. Elkins talked about the virtual, about looking into it. Mrs. Agostini talked about tobacco and vaping and how do you differentiate. And, level 2 would be if you're vaping, would be tobacco vape versus level 3, which would be the THC vapes. And then 23-24, they talked about the 4 gang activity incidents that included 23 students. That is an eye-opener. Here in Richland County, if we have 4 gang incidents and we have 23 students that were a part of that, that's eye-opening. So we really need to tackle that as a community. There's a lot of things the board and administration can do, but it's really us as parents that are out there to help our fellow parents get the information out there and make sure these kids are taken care of. And then they talked about who reports it. And now these reports go into Power School, and Power School is where we get our grades, and I look at it daily. My son is scared to death because sometimes I know his grade before he does. And he likes to be on top of things with his grades. So sometimes I have to email him, hey, this was a little lower. Let's look at studying. We'll talk about it when we get home. Or there was a 0 on this, homework assignment, and then I get that, no, Dad, I turned it in, they haven't updated yet. Okay, we're good to go. But I use Power School religiously, and I think it's a good thing. Power School. Now, the next thing they moved into was the next agenda, and it was the agenda for the September 10th regular scheduled board meeting. Now, this struck me weird because there were a motion made by Tamika Schuler, Washington, for a report for the board, and it was seconded by McFadden for reading coaches, Read to Succeed, interventionists, all those jobs, and reading growth. But they didn't want to add it to the 10 September. They was adding it to the 24th of September meeting. Now, I thought this was to be added because this 10.1 was an agenda for September 10th. But I'll get into that here in a second. And then McFadden talked about budget updates, and the budget updates weren't how the budget was going, but it was the positions that they created for money-wise. So, like, let's say if we needed a teacher here and we put the money there, is that position filled yet? And that's what she was looking at to see if that could get filled. And everybody voted yes for the one that Mrs. Washington did, and then there was 6 yes and 1 no. Miss Porter voted no for Miss McFadden's thing. And that was going to be put on the 8th of October, which, again, that was another meeting that's not the 10th of October, so I don't understand how that kind of gets on there. I think there should be a block somewhere in here to say, hey, we request this from staff at a future meeting so that staff can start working on it, so you're not like, hey, I want this, our next meeting's this time, it needs to be done. So, because there's a lot of details that these staff members have to get from an administrator. One of the other things was they talked about budget meeting is asking, the group of teachers that were there, the speech pathologists, they were there advocating for their pay. They know their worth and they think they should get paid. And, there was some comments made that, hey, this isn't budget season. Bring that back up in budget season. But my thing is, I understand we need to focus on our test scores, but if we don't keep our staff happy and start looking at things in the future instead of rushing through it at the end, I think we can better serve our staff and teachers that way by actually looking at it year round, especially when nobody got what they thought they were going to get. For the new hires, great, but people that's been there for years upon years, they really didn't get anything. They didn't get hardly anything at all. And it's just one of those issues that I think needs to be looked at. Now, the next board meeting is, of course, 10 September. However, there is a meeting that has been put on there for 30 August. And when I click to view the agenda, it's called to order. And then they're talking about review the agenda for 10 September and draft agenda for 24 September. So I think those two motions that were made for later agendas, I think they were wanting to break that down a little bit more and make sure they're put on the right agenda. So my hat's off for them thinking, because when they made those two motions, I was like, is that even right? Because we should be talking about the next meeting, not the next 2 or 3. It should be the next meeting. But once again, that's where the board policies are kind of gray with what you can do and how you can add things. Granted, it looks black and white, but it's really gray areas to add things in the future. So I think as a board member, that is another policy that needs to be looked at. And the board policies need to be looked at in order to help implement administration rules and things like that. So if we get board policies right and they carry over and we make sure we adjust everything that it connects to and we look at everything in depth instead of just bringing up a policy and reading it and then trying to make changes on the fly and then bringing it in for next reading, and then you go to your third reading and you're like, wait a minute, we should have done this, and now you're changing it. And I think it just leaves a lot of room for messing things up. And then from there, they went into their final comments and everything like that, and the final comments was great. And then there was something brought to my attention. So at Polo Road Elementary School, there were some individuals there to help their media center. They have 12,000 books that's not on the shelf, not put in order. They're in boxes because it was supposed to get remodeled. It did not get remodeled, but the students at Polo are not able to utilize their library right now. So I went out today, and I'm going back out tomorrow, and I'm going to spend quite a few hours again tomorrow putting books on shelves, putting them in alphabetical order, using the Dewey Decimal System, all that stuff that I learned in elementary school, which surprisingly, I still remember the Dewey Decimal System when they told me where the books went, nonfiction to fiction and all that, and then the decimal system and how they break it down for fiction and mysteries and things like that so kids can find it easier so it's not all one way. So I highly suggest, and I'm a realtor, so if any realtors are watching this and you got time, you need to get out, because we talked about that's who we are, we're in our community, you need to get out and help, okay? That's a shout out to the realtors. Now, you don't have to be a member of Polo Elementary. I am not. My kids go to Round Top and Blythewood Middle, but I knew they needed help, and I live right down the road. So what do I do as a community member? Because I love kids and dogs. I love. So I went down there to help. I mean, I'm president of the Dentsville Baseball Youth League that runs out of Polo Road. Coaching kids, president of that, make sure they have a season. And it's a rec season, so it's not travel, it's not all that crazy stuff. It is so kids in this community have a place to play baseball and learn and just be better in life. Because the amount of help that we get with our volunteer coaches is great. And those coaches help those kids overcome not just baseball, but overcome other things that they can use in school and use in life later on down the line. I remember things when something pops up in front of me and I think about it, how to handle it. I remember, well, I did this when I played soccer. I did this in baseball. I did this in football. When I was doing triathlons for the Air Force, I remember this is how I overcome things. And I use that. Sports can be used that way because it's just another way of learning. So that's the breakdown of this meeting. Hopefully you guys, if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. The items that I went over, please go to the school board, Richland 2 School Board associated docs. You can go to the agenda and then you can break down those charts. You can click on those charts and get it down. Now the thing is, I do not know when the video is going to be up. It looks like they had some video errors, like I said, and hopefully that can be done. So once again, that was the breakdown. Hopefully y'all have a wonderful day. God bless. And remember, on the 5th of November, after you vote for everybody up top, that down ballot ticket, please go down there and vote Gary Dennis for Richland 2 School Board. Thank you and have a wonderful day.